Hello and welcome to Reel Geeks. I am Crash and Burn, and with me as always is Mike Montgomery.
Hey!
And in lieu of anything new coming out, this week we have uncovered an often forgotten Halifax local gem that we hope you will cringe along with us to.
A police strike paralyzes an entire city and unleashes a violent new order. Suddenly, every citizen must arm and protect themselves.
What do we got to defend ourselves with?
The attackers have every kind of weapon. The innocent defenders have only their courage and their cunning to survive the siege.
1983's The Night Warriors, aka Siege, aka Self-Defense.
And when we say oft forgotten, I think what we really mean is if you are in the Halifax film scene but under the age of 35, you probably have no idea that this film even exists.
Yeah, I forgot that this film existed. I had never seen it before. I had heard of it. Very specifically, I had heard of the film Self-Defense, but I thought it was essentially lost.
I literally just stumbled into this thing entirely by accident. I was listening to one of us.net's home release show, Digital Noise, where they mentioned this film getting an anniversary release, and I was kind of half listening to the episode, and then all of a sudden I hear shot and set in Halifax, Nova Scotia, and I'm like, you have my curiosity piqued.
And it certainly is. Quite a bit of this film not only are just background and establishing shots of early 80s Halifax, it is set during an actual police strike in 1981. So there is like a definitive time that this film occurs in. The apartment building that the siege actually occurs in, I swear to God, I have partied there. I swear to God. I have woken up, looked at those walls, and gone, where the hell am I?
Apparently that actually was like the filmmaker's own apartment. And like the opening of this movie alone, if you are familiar with downtown Halifax in any way, you're going to spot so many familiar things. Okay, so there's the historic properties. There's those giant smokestacks over in Dartmouth.
Oh yeah, my favorite part of it is when they get chased into the Alexander Keith's Brewery courtyard. It's one of those films that it looks decent if you don't know the geography of the city at all. And if you do, you're suddenly confused how they're in an indoor mall. Directed, produced, and written by Paul Donovan, directed as well by Maura O'Connell, and starring Tom Nardini and Brenda Bazinet. This film is an early Salter Street film.
I thought so!
Oh, it is, and like, it's by the same creative team that not only gave us Lex, but DEFCON 4, the classic piece of just pure Canadiana 80s garbage, which I say lovingly. Mwah, beautiful. Yeah, this is a Salter Street film. So this movie begins with a report from ATV, and it's an actual news report by Blaine Henshaw, who still lives in Halifax. He mostly performs folk music, I believe. But yeah, like, it immediately feels entirely real right up until you get to the gay bar with 5 people in it.
That news report, though, apparently it's not just like legitimate news footage, but apparently that is the only surviving news footage, according to IMDb at any rate, relating to the Halifax police strike.
I wouldn't be surprised, because it didn't exactly matter all that much overall. ATV was at that time just a very small regional news organization. I can't see why they would keep clips from that. They would have been physical clips. Yeah, I can absolutely believe that this film is the last remaining shred of like video evidence of that. Absolutely.
Oh yeah, and like just the simple fact that the movie has barely even opened and already it's a time capsule is kind of cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if you stop the movie right there, it has its own merits, and it doesn't get worse. Because from here it ain't gonna get better. And I say that lovingly, because this is a beautiful piece of like grindhouse film that also suffers from every single problem grindhouse films have.
Yeah.
And while it is certainly it is overall a pro-queer film, it starts with a mass murder in a gay bar, followed by a tense chase through Halifax that ends in an hour and a half long siege, multiple murders, and finally ends with, and I am jumping ahead, but it has to be said, a message that, some of those who work forces are the same who burn crosses. So be afraid, be very afraid, be very, very, very afraid.
Which, especially with the way Halifax police has been lately.
Be afraid!
Yeah.
After a street gang calling themselves the New Order massacre the patrons of a Halifax gay bar, an urban siege breaks out when one would-be victim escapes and takes refuge with an unlikely group of neighbors and roommates who must survive the night or die trying. Where the fuck did you find this film?
Actually, like I said earlier, it was quite literally that oneofus.net episode that mentioned it and gave their thoughts on it, and I was like, I kind of want to track this down and be able to discuss it on here, because pretty much all the film-related podcasts that I listen to are based out of Austin, Texas, which currently is way more of a Hollywood-friendly filming location than Halifax is. So I listen to them talking about spotting Austin landmarks in movies, about how the new Texas Chainsaw Massacre film on Netflix says that it's set just outside of Austin, and they're all going, no, it isn't. And then I just tracked down the trailer on YouTube, and I was like, yeah, this is legitimately kind of interesting. And then found the actual movie on YouTube, or at least a watchable copy of it.
Yeah, and fair warning, while yes, the copy is available on YouTube, I would absolutely suggest tracking down a pirated or VHS or anything else, because the copy that is on YouTube is horribly dark, and you look at photos that are from like the official prints of this film, and they're bright and colorful and apparently take place in day. Like, holy shit, I thought this film was shot entirely in a closet.
Oh no, I thought it was filmed entirely at night, and with some of the locations, you kind of can't help but go, were they actually allowed to film there?
Oh yeah, like there's definitely various shots that were illegally stolen from the city. I would not be surprised by that one bit.
Yeah. Specifically
when they clearly needed a backup shot that is later on in the film, that's apparently filmed in Toronto. That's when one character leaves the apartment building and runs behind a street sweeper. And suddenly what is Halifax becomes, nowhere in Halifax looks like that. There is nowhere in Halifax that looks like that. And then back to Halifax.
But also at the same time, the whole thing has such an almost a student film feel to it. And when you add in that the budget was apparently about $300,000.
Which I'm impressed that this had a budget of $300,000. I'd love to know where $300,000 in 1983 money went into this film, because it's not exactly into big name actors or
No.
effects or location. As you said, it was filmed in the director, writer, producer's apartment. I would just love to know where the actual money went to. My presumption is this film more or less kind of created Salter Street Films. And by that, I don't mean, I'm well aware that it was Salter Street's first film, but I suspect that a hell of a lot of that budget went into purchasing the necessary equipment, like your first camera, your first lighting rigs, your first everything that you need or might need for other films. And yeah, this isn't a student film. It's definitely, though, quite literally the first film of a production company. And you can see them growing and learning throughout it. And by the time you reach DEFCON 4, they've certainly learned some lessons. Some.
Yeah. And also in terms of the budget, I think just the simple fact that apparently those guns were less props and more actual guns.
See, now that's
might have been a bit
delightful.
of a budget factor.
That's truly delightful, considering that they then shot laser sounds. No lasers. We don't have money for that, but we have laser sounds. I love that. This film carries a lot of those intentional B movie tropes, where someone does something that is clearly like cheap and hacky that looks actually super fucking cool. Like, to avoid firing the handgun in the club scene at the beginning, they put what would be a silencer on the gun. And so you can get... And then they put the silencer on the gun, and then he takes a pillow. Yes.
Puts that over the side, and I was literally just sitting here going, you've already got the silencer. I don't know why you're
super quiet. Super quiet. And that allows you to use the one gun sound you have, which is the zoop, zoop. And that's cool. It's like, okay, that was smart. You found a way to work around it. It makes you seem extra threatening and extra villainous, because, like, what kind of an asshole just randomly carries a silencer in case you have to murder an entire gay bar? I don't know. But then later on, they just kind of like fuck off on it. And like, they've got predator vision. How much did that predator vision cost them? Was that where the budget went?
Quite possibly, actually.
And I'm not knocking it. It was clearly someone had a vision for a siege film set in Halifax. They had a couple of really clear ideas. Some of the shots in this are, I wouldn't say iconic, but they have an eye to them. And you can definitely get a sense that, yes, later on, there will be quality content from this company. But, ooh, damn, is it not this? And I say that as someone who would watch this again and again and again, because it is just... You forget that they made films like this. You forget that, like, every now and then, some friends just get together and decide to make some fucking crappy cinema. And it deserves to live. And maybe not be completely forgotten.
I don't know, so, and, like, quite frankly, as, like, I mentioned earlier, this, to me, it felt like a student film. I would say, if you are a film student, I do feel like this is worth tracking down and checking out. Or if you're a fan of, say, Robert Rodriguez, because I know the tracking shots in the film were apparently shot from a wheelchair, which is a trick that Rodriguez also often uses. So I think even today, like 40 years later, there's still quite a bit I think you could learn from this movie.
It's a very guerrilla film.
Yeah.
Very.
Extremely.
That's almost why I don't say it's a student film, because it's the shots are smart. They know what they're doing. There aren't flaws in like, oh, you have no idea where to point that camera. It's more like you just haven't figured out the finessing of how to do, say, like, okay, you want to suggest that the lights are off. You've turned all the lights off so that no one can see inside. That doesn't mean turn all the lights off so that I can't see what the fuck's on screen. You just haven't figured out, like, finessing of that fake darkness. Or say enriching characters to have full names or any names.
I think your issue with the names, I think that's more a matter of the quality of the copy that we had. Because the lead protagonist, like amongst the people in the apartment, he is referred to as Horatio, but I think they drop his name maybe once, and it's pretty easy to miss.
Yeah, I just call him Square Jaw.
Yeah, that
Square
works.
Jaw. There's White Lady. There's gays, other gays, dead gays.
Yeah,
living gay.
The White Lady would be Barbara, who again, unless you're paying close attention in her first few scenes, you're probably going to miss her name. Chester was pretty much my favorite of the group because I'm pretty sure he's at least a sociopath.
Yeah. And like, you wonder, was that intentionally written? Was it just a bad performance, or was it a great performance?
Like, I love how the scene where they're taking stock of what they have in the apartment that they can use to kind of respond to the siege, and they have a rifle that only has 2 bullets. Why does it only have 2 bullets? Because Chester had been just firing at the police station back at like the start of the strike.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, as you do. You know, I'm just gonna go discharge some weapons at the cops. It'll be fine. They're on strike. They get it.
Exactly.
I'm not gonna try to do anything. That guy's firing wildly at the station. Yeah, he is. Are you a scab? Scab?
He just has the material and the know-how for a homemade rocket, because of course he does.
Yeah, he's definitely the excuse for a lot of the later action in this film. It's like, how can we do this? Well, Chester. He's a character who I feel like was definitely added later on in the writing when they realized they have no reason for any of this to happen. You know, this should really end with like the gang breaking into the apartment and killing everyone, and it's about 15 minutes and that's it. Instead, they decide to kind of proto Home Alone this apartment, which once again, very creative use of a space that you live in. Paul Donovan has definitely sat at home way too many nights looking around being like, if someone broke in here, how could I kill them? And then he shot exactly what came to mind.
Also with the characters in the apartment, we have Patrick and Steve, the 2 blind students. Steve is basically the blind version of John Cryer's character from the Thomas Jane Punisher.
Mm-hmm.
Fat and not that bright. And as long as I'm carrying along this Marvel comparison here, Patrick, the way they use him, Patrick is basically Daredevil.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many scenes where Patrick has got a glass up to his ear against the wall and is describing what those gang members are doing in the other apartment.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there going, I see what you're going for, but I'm not sure that that's how that works.
Yeah. A film that is either better or worse would have had him counter the Predator vision with sonar. There is another writing of this where they had maybe $500 more and gave him some sort of sonar vision and a gun. And that, it would have been a sniper hunt. I live for that universe.
And that would have been great, frankly.
Speaking of like very, very strange, very violent characters in this. So the gang that is essentially led by Bruce McCullough's bully character. Any character Bruce McCullough played that was a bully was the leader of this gang. It's a beautiful coincidence. Either that or he based every one of his characters off it, which, considering his age and the timing of this film, that's possible.
Yeah.
But the real leader is this dude in a leather jacket called Cabe.
Yeah.
Who just kind of appears because, again, I guess they took a second pass at the script and realized they needed a real villain and not just random asshole gang members. And Cabe is played by Doug Lennox, who, dear listener, you have seen this man before. Guaranteed you have seen him. And guaranteed I can make you remember his face, even though you will never remember his name. Doug Lennox is the bartender from the first X-Men film who puts a shotgun to Wolverine's head, and that shotgun then gets cut in half.
Nice. Like, the character of Cabe is actually a pretty decent character. He's too good a character for this group.
Yes, he is too well written. He's plucked out of another better story with more dynamic characters and engagement, stripped a little bit of his details, context, and dynamics so that he's not quite there, but you can see the hints and shades of what was once, and slapped onto this film so that they can make an extra 15 minutes of content and have a double evil boss at the end. And I kind of hate it. I love his character. I think he needs to be removed from this film and restored to the one where he went mano a mano with someone who probably had an enormous and beautiful bushy mustache and perm.
Frankly, you're like really not wrong. Like, I mean, again, like, we agree that he's great.
He's great. This is not the movie he should be in.
No, and I think a lot of the problem is you have him, and then you have the rest of the gang that's like the G-rated, made-for-TV movie version of T-Bird and his crew from The Crow.
Yeah, T-Bird and his crew from The Crow, but if they bought everything at Guy's Frenchies and were led by Bruce McCullough. I love it. Perfect. Print.
Oh yeah, like T-Bird was what I kept thinking of the entire time, but it's like everything that made T-Bird evil was just taken out, and these guys are just homophobic dicks.
To which they then add on murdering an entire apartment block.
Yeah, no, exactly. And another thing is that with this movie, I've heard comparisons to Assault on Precinct 13, which makes sense because I also kept thinking, like, if you are a fan of early John Carpenter and you're curious what else is out there in that vein, this would be great. But I also find myself thinking that where we agree that Cabe is a great character who does not need to be here, you take him out, and this movie also almost becomes like a really early version of The Purge.
Yes. Yeah. There are many levels of potential better movie here. It doesn't have the richness of Precinct 13. It doesn't have the, I guess, boldness creatively as The Purge of saying, okay, no, here's the idea behind it. But it's that necessary middle ground where like both of those ideas kind of grow. You need to have something like this and a bunch of somethings like this where like here's half an idea and it's percolating, but we don't have the budget and we don't have the experience yet to turn it into something bigger. But out of this, something incredible will come when someone is inspired by it.
Oh,
or at least has the same basic idea.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There are so many films that I can almost see springboarding just from this. And like, if nothing else, there's also the fact that the score of this movie is as John Carpenter as you can possibly get without actually getting John Carpenter.
It is wonderfully John Carpenter, and might I say, while entirely cliche, it's subtle.
Yeah.
It's not overly used. It doesn't rely on stings too hard. It doesn't roll with it unnecessarily. It has a very frequently subtle soundscape that just kind of gives you a sense of anxiety, not, okay, I'm listening to someone intentionally do their best John Carpenter, and it's bad. You know, it was well done. It's a soundscape. I wouldn't call it a soundtrack because I don't know if there's necessarily songs in there, but it's a soundscape that works perfectly for it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I just, by the end credits, and you hear that it's John Carpenter sort of score, I'm just on the couch, I'm like, that wasn't a good movie, but I'm actually rather satisfied.
Yeah, I was rather satisfied. Even by the end, it has a nice conclusion. You have your double villain ending. You have a Bruce McCullough gets electrocuted to death, classic Home Alone style.
Yeah.
He does his best Joe Pesci before Joe Pesci ever did it, and then they kill the bad guy. Movie ends. It fades to a mother and a child playing in Point Pleasant Park, and it says, oh, the strike ended after 41 or 42 days. Okay, fine. And the kid and the mother are playing ball, and the kid decides to biff the ball off in some random direction. And a cop goes and picks it up and gives it back to them. And the cop turns, and you see it's one of the gang members. And it's like, God damn it, why didn't you thread that in at any point earlier? You have such a great message right there of just like, not being able to trust the authorities, even if there were authority at the time. It would have just, all you need is a couple of hints dropped throughout that, oh, by the way, all of these guys are actually cops. It would have made the film, I feel, not only work better, but have a stronger memory. This is a film that should be remembered by the Nova Scotia Halifax gay community as having a message about who you can and cannot trust in local power. And no one has ever heard of this fucking film in the Halifax gay community.
I forget the gay community. I would assume that no one in the Halifax community in general has really heard of this movie.
Very few. Yeah. I know that Karsten Knox has briefly covered it in a blog post on Halifax Bloggers, and that is the most I can find for a city that usually gloms onto any mention for dear sweet life. So, all that said, what do you give this film, Mike?
You know what? Numerically, I don't really know how to rate it because does it have tons of problems? Absolutely. But I'm also going, knowing the low budget, there are so many problems that I can just completely forgive. But as I'm thinking about it now, I think I'm going to go 4 out of 5 because, like I said, at the end, it is a fascinating little film. I was thoroughly satisfied, and just the basic, I had a good time with it. And as we've said, like, there are absolutely scenarios where this film needs to be seen. Like, I think if you're a film student, definitely check it out. If you like early John Carpenter, definitely check it out. Heck, if you're at all interested in the history of film in Halifax, this is 100% worth checking out.
Absolutely. And yeah, like, I enjoyed it not only as some classic B-movie grindhouse schlock, but as a chance to see a part of the city and its history that doesn't often get looked at. It's just out of, like, my reach by about a decade of my experience in the city and Halifax. I was born 5 years or so after the strike, and so that part of the city, the 80s-ness of this film, the 80s-ness of that Halifax, I kind of only know of in myth and legend, in a sense. And so it's really fascinating to see that. And so, in that spirit, I give this film a $50 gift certificate to Alfredo Weinstein and Hose, a private screening at the Oxford Theatre, and then a night of getting blackout drunk of partying at the Derby.
Nice. The only other thing that I would say about this movie is I would love a remake, but I have one condition. Give it to Jason Eisner.
Yeah, I could see that. That would be great. Jason Eisner, and challenge him to make it for the same budget. See what he does.
Oh, no, yeah. Oh, nice. Yes.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for listening to Reel Geeks. I have been Crash and Burn. With me, as always, is Mike Montgomery. If you like this, please like, share, subscribe. Give us some money if you think about it. Contact us at realgeekshfx@gmail.com for complaints, questions, queries, concerns, anything. Mike, anything to add on to that?
I think just that, frankly, I would love to start getting audience questions. And otherwise, stick around for next week when, as mentioned in our news episode, we'll be discussing the latest desperate attempt from Sony to be relevant in the comic book film genre, Morbius. God help us.
See you next week. Bye, everybody.
Bye.